James Carter never liked airports. Not because he feared flying, but because he never knew who he had to prove himself to. He was 62 years old. A quiet man. A man who lived his life working hard, paying his bills, loving his family. A man who asked for nothing more than respect. On this morning, he carried one small bag and a printed boarding pass. He wore a neat shirt, pressed pants, and the same calm expression he always carried. He stepped forward when the airline employee called the next passenger. The employee looked at him, then looked again. Her eyebrows tightened in suspicion. "ID, please," she said sharply. James handed it over. She turned it around, held it up to the light, stared at his face, then back at the ID. People behind him walked through quickly. Barely a glance, smiles, nods, no questions. But for James, everything paused. "You sure this is you?" She asked a small question. A simple question. But to James, it felt familiar. Too familiar. And in that moment, as he stood there holding his bag and his dignity, everything he had lived through began to rise inside him. Because racism doesn't always shout. Sometimes it whispers. And those whispers stay with you for a lifetime. The past began to unfold. James was 9 the first time he learned his skin made people judge him. His mother had walked him to school that day. She squeezed his hand and said, "Be polite. Be smart. Don't let nobody make you feel small." He didn't understand why she said that. Not yet. He entered his classroom smiling, excited. He loved learning. He loved books. He loved raising his hand and answering questions. But that day, teacher looked at him as if he had already done something wrong. "You can sit in the back," she said. "No need for you to be up front." He hesitated. He didn't understand, but he obeyed. During lunch, he sat alone. He opened his sandwich carefully, looked around, hoping someone would sit near him. Instead, a group of kids pointed at him and laughed. "Don't sit near him," one boy whispered loudly. "He's dirty." James looked down at his clean clothes. He smelled the fresh soap from his morning bath. He didn't understand, but he felt something break inside him, something no child should ever feel. The world had decided he was less. By the time James turned 15, he already knew the signs. The tight stare, the quiet shift in tone, the extra pair of eyes watching him. He and his friends stepped into a small corner store after school. They laughed, joked, talked about basketball. But the moment James entered, the manager's head snapped up. The man followed him aisle to aisle. Close enough for James to hear his footsteps. Close enough for James to feel his breath. James picked up a soda. The manager leaned in. "You planning to buy that?" he asked. James nodded softly. "Yes, sir." But his friends, 2 white boys from his math class, walked freely. No eyes, no suspicion. No questions at the register. The manager double-checked the price. Then checked it again. Then glared at James as he handed over his change. James walked out slowly. Humiliation stuck to him like dust. He didn't tell his mother. He didn't tell his father. He just swallowed it. Like he swallowed so many things. When James turned 28, he finally had stability. A small office job, steady hours, and a quiet desk facing a window. He worked hard. Arrived early. Stayed late. Never complained. When a new employee joined, James took him under his wing. He trained him, guided him, taught him every detail. The new guy was friendly, confident. He joked with everyone. James hoped the promotion would finally come his way. He had earned it. But on Friday afternoon, the manager called the new guy into the office. After 10 minutes, they both walked out, smiling. The manager called for everyone's attention. "We're happy to announce our new team lead," he said proudly. "Let's congratulate Brian." Brian stood tall, proud. James clapped quietly. After the crowd dispersed, the manager approached James. "You're great where you are," he said. "Let's keep you there." No explanation. No path forward. Just a door gently closed in his face. On the way home, James sat on the bus. He looked out the window. Streetlights blurred by. He felt the same quiet hurt he had known since childhood. A hurt that had followed him into adulthood. When James was 53, his daughter Maya got sick with a heavy fever. He rushed her to the emergency room. He walked to reception, holding his trembling daughter in his arms. "Please," he said softly. "She needs help." The receptionist didn't look up. She clicked on her computer, called the next patient. Ignored James completely. A white couple walked in behind him. She looked up immediately. "Hi there. How can I help you?" James stepped forward again. "Ma'am, please." She sighed loudly. "Sir, I'll get to you." When the doctor finally saw Maya, he barely examined her. "Probably nothing serious," he said. "And, do you have insurance?" "The good kind." James bit his tongue. "Yes, I do." The doctor nodded in disbelief. "Oh, well, that's good." It took 3 hours for Maya to get proper treatment. 3 hours of fear. 3 hours of being unseen. James never forgot it. When James turned 60, he began helping at a local community center. He sorted food donations, helped families fill out forms, sat with children during homework hours. One afternoon, he met a young black family standing outside the building. A mother, 2 small boys, a suitcase, tears on her cheeks. They had just been evicted. Rent increases. Job loss. Bad luck. James brought them inside. He found them blankets, food, a quiet room to rest. As he watched the 2 boys share a sandwich, he felt a deep ache. They reminded him of himself. A child trying to understand a world stacked against him. A child who didn't know why people treated him differently. A child who felt small, even when he did nothing wrong. James knelt down and said softly, "You're going to be okay. I promise." He wasn't sure if it was true, but he needed them to believe it. He needed to believe it himself. And now, back in the airport, James stood under the cold fluorescent lights. The airline employee stared at him again. Her lips tightened. "This picture doesn't look like you," she said. James kept his voice steady. "It's me, ma'am." She held the ID up again. "Are you sure?" People behind him shuffled impatiently. Someone sighed loudly. A supervisor noticed and walked over. "What's the issue?" The employee handed him the ID. He says, "This is him." Supervisor glanced once at the card, then at James. "It is him," the supervisor said. "Let him through." The employee frowned but stepped aside. "Next," she snapped. James walked forward slowly, not angry, not surprised, just tired, so very tired. Sometimes racism doesn't strike like lightning. Sometimes it drips slowly, a lifetime of drops, and each drop leaves a mark. When James reached his seat on the plane, he sat quietly. He looked out the window. Clouds drifted by like soft memories. He thought about the little boy in the back of the classroom. The teenager followed in the store. The worker overlooked. The man handcuffed on the curb. The father ignored in the hospital. The volunteer comforting a homeless family, and now, the old man being questioned for existing. James whispered to himself, "I survived all of it." But the scars? The scars stayed. Closed his eyes. He didn't want pity. He didn't want anger. He wanted understanding. He wanted people to see the small things, the quiet things, the everyday moments that never make headlines, but leave permanent bruises on the soul. There are millions of people like James. People who walk through life carrying silent wounds. People who learn to smile through hurt. People who learn to stay calm, even when the world shakes them. Racism did not disappear. It didn't fade. It didn't vanish. It simply learned to hide in the pause of a clerk's stare, in the doubt in a doctor's voice, in the hands on a police officer's gun, in the store manager's footsteps behind a child, in the simple question, "Are you sure this is you?" To everyone watching, especially those who lived through the 50s, 60s, 70s, and beyond, you know these moments. You felt them. You saw them. And if this story touched your heart, speak about it. Tell someone. Share your memories. Share your pain. And share your truth. One voice can break years of silence. One heart can inspire another. And one story, yes, one story, can change how someone sees the world, because healing begins when silence ends. Now I want to ask you, if you had lived James's life, faced all those quiet, hidden moments of racism, what would you have done differently? Could you have stayed silent? Or would you have found a way to fight back?